Okay, let's dive into this explainer. If you're an infrastructure or security architect tasked with navigating the really honestly murky waters of migrating your enterprise to modern networking protocols, well, you're in exactly the right place. Today, we're kicking off part one of a comprehensive 10-part architectural tutorial series focusing entirely on IPv4 and IPv6 transition technologies. Now, our source material for this deep dive comes straight from Virtualization Options LLC. They're a Colorado-based technology research, education, and advisory organization, and they've put together a highly structured RFC-grounded tutorial explicitly designed for personnel who already possess a deep understanding of IPv4 networking. So we're skipping the basics. In this first part, we're focusing exclusively on Chapter 1 of their material. We're going to lay down the foundational architecture and security design principles that you absolutely must know before you deploy a single transition mechanism. Let's move to and see how this builds. Our roadmap for today covers 1. The transition imperative, 2. The end of IPv4, 3. Decades of unavoidable coexistence, 4. 3 models of transition, and 5. The new attack surface. We're dealing with a literal burning platform here, so let's get right into it. Section 1. The transition imperative. We'll look at why mastering these transition technologies is completely non-negotiable for security teams.
Section 2. The end of IPv4. Let's look at why this is a concluded event.
Look, we really need to dispel a dangerous, lingering myth in the IT world. IPv4 address exhaustion, it's not a future problem. It's done. It is a concluded event. Way back in February 2011, IANA, the Internet Assigned Numbers Authority, completely depleted its free pool of IPv4 addresses. And then, by 2019, all 5 regional Internet registries, ARIN, RIPE, APNI, ALEXIC, AFRINIC, exhausted their standard allocation pools. The stark reality is that no new public IPv4 allocations are available from any RIR through normal channels. The well is officially permanently dry. And on the flip side of that exhaustion is massive operational adoption. To put this into perspective, as of 2026, roughly 45% of users reach Google services over IPv6. That's a staggering scale. Major ISPs, giants like T-Mobile US and Reliance Jio, they're already operating IPv6 primary or even IPv6 only access networks. So this transition isn't just on the horizon anymore, it is fully operational right now, today.
Which brings us to Section 3. Decades of unavoidable coexistence. This is the architect's dilemma.
Now you might be wondering, if IPv4 is exhausted and IPv6 is widely deployed, why not just flip the switch? Well, because a clean overnight cutover is architecturally impossible. Why? Legacy anchors. We're talking about legacy OT and ICS systems, embedded industrial devices, and critical enterprise applications built with hard-coded IPv4 assumptions. You can't just rapidly replatform those systems. They act like massive anchors tying us to the old protocol, forcing a highly complex coexistence period that's going to be measured in decades, not years. For the foreseeable future, you will be managing both protocols.
Section 4. 3 models of transition. Let's look at the toolkit for bridging this gap.
To bridge this gap, we rely on 3 high-level philosophies. First up is dual stack. That's running complete IPv4 and IPv6 stacks simultaneously on every node. Conceptually, super simple, but it literally doubles your management overhead and, crucially, still consumes those scarce IPv4 addresses we just talked about. Second is tunneling, which is basically encapsulating one protocol inside the other to cross incompatible infrastructure. And third is translation, relying on stateful or stateless header conversion at the network boundary. I want to explicitly tease that in later parts of this 10-part tutorial, we are going to dive deep into the specific mechanisms of these models like MAP-E and NAT64. But for now, just understand that these are your 3 architectural options.
And finally, Section 5, the new attack surface, bringing the architect's dilemma front and center.
This brings us to the core security thesis of Chapter 1. The source material lays it out perfectly. Every transition mechanism introduces a distinct attack surface. So, the crucial point is that your security posture fundamentally changes depending on the tool you use. Tunnels? They often bypass traditional perimeter controls completely because the traffic is encapsulated. Translators? They break end-to-end integrity, making packet inspection incredibly difficult. And dual stack? It literally doubles your policy surface area because you now have to maintain parallel rule sets. Let's look at the absolute most common and dangerous dual stack misconfiguration in enterprise environments today. On one side, you've got this lockdown, pristine IPv4 perimeter. Your teams have spent years writing detailed IP tables rules, totally hardening the edge. But right next to it, you often find a wide-open IPv6 interface with completely empty IP6 tables. Security teams just simply fail to populate the parallel rule set.
And this brilliantly illustrates how attackers slip right past your defenses. If your vulnerability scanners are only pointing at your IPv4 inventories, they are entirely blind to services listening on IPv6. Plus, applications using a wildcard socket binding, represented by that double colon in IPv6, will listen on both the IPv4 and IPv6 paths. So, a service perfectly hardened against an IPv4 attack is completely exposed via its unmonitored IPv6 interface. Actually, compound this with the fact that Linux, Windows, and macOS enable the IPv6 stack by default, and you have an invisible, unmonitored attack surface right inside your network out of the box.
Which brings us to the ultimate warning of Chapter 1. The universal risk here is that default IPv4 rule sets protect absolutely none of the transition mechanisms. Whether it's Protocol 41 tunnels, specific UDP ports like 3544, or synthesized DNS records, they will all bypass your standard legacy IPv4 controls. Explicit mechanism-aware firewall rules are completely mandatory for all 11 transition technologies discussed in the series, no exceptions.
So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to take back to your teams. Is your pristine, lockdown IPv4 perimeter actually just masking a wide-open IPv6 attack surface? It's a critical question that every infrastructure and security architect absolutely must answer. That wraps up part 1 of our explainer. You definitely won't want to miss part 2, where we'll start breaking down the technical mitigations and specific security designs you need to lock this down. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive, and I'll see you in the next one.